I am, as I hope you know, dating coach Hayley Quinn, and I'm joined today by one of my other fellow sort of like somewhat colleagues, somewhat someone I admire within the whole dating and men's lifestyle industry. It's the fantastic James Marshall.
Yeah, I'm James Marshall, reporting from Portugal.
I like how that we both had the same idea here, where you've gone to camp to a farm in Portugal and I've gone to one in France. You know, so we could be amongst, there's clearly some commonalities there. We could be amongst goats, chill out and think about stuff. So I guess I wanted to speak to you about, particularly for the guys out there, with not being able to physically meet someone being a thing at the moment, what can guys do purposefully during this time to make themselves more attractive as a man?
Firstly, I think it's okay that everyone does a bit of Netflixing and chilling, the one where you're alone. I think that is okay. What I think is the first thing I would be telling guys to do is to take a stock take of what you currently now are doing, right? Because everyone has habits. You're all in habit patterns right now. You have a daily routine. It's different than it was 3 weeks ago, but you have one. And so for tomorrow, or when this video comes out, just on a little bit of paper or on your phone, make a note of how do you spend your time and don't try and change it. And you can just include Netflix, browsing YouTube, any of the rents, looking at screens, looking at us probably. As okay, I do 3 hours of that. I do a bit of this and I did a bit of exercise that day and so on. And you'll get an accurate representation of what you're doing. Now, then what I would recommend is fast forward to day one of when lockdown opens up. Because it will. Sooner or later in your country or your city, it'll be a different time from other places, but there will be a time where when the governments say, okay, everyone, you can come out now. And for the first week, people will be tentative and they'll be, keeping away from each other a bit. And then it'll be back to some kind of new normal, at least within that country. That's my prediction. So my question to you guys, gents, is what are you going to do on day one? And I think if you chart, what are you doing right now? Honest appraisal. And then realistically, if you don't change anything between now and then, what are you going to do on day one, right? Because for some men, it will be so obvious. It's like the moment the fucking doors open, I'm out there and I'm going to run up and go, hi, you're the first woman and I want to say hi. There's going to be plenty of guys who take this as a wake-up call and go, I'm not wasting much of my time anymore. I'm in any area of my life. And I hope that's what a lot of people take from this. And so they are mentally preparing and maybe they're researching the information they need, but they're really got a much more clear sense of making a vow to themselves. Like there's no more, I'm a bit scared of talking to, maybe I should have put, it's like the net effect of what you did for the last X number of years is proven now. Now's what you got to see. Here's your dividend for your effort. And if it's zero, it's going to stay that way. That's the important thing to think about. If you come out day one and continue doing what you did, you will get the same thing that you got, which you know what it is now, because there's no other distractions or busyness or maybe I'm going to meet that girl that's half flaking. There's none of that to like distract yourself with. It's like, here's the result. You alone. What are you going to do when the doors open? That's what I would be thinking as like a simple way to, let's say, signpost how you can use this time more effectively. Now, then that leads to the question, how do you fill the rest in? We can look at that, but that's my first thoughts.
And I'm glad that you said that actually, because I think one of the things I've heard about this time or the sensation that people are having, it's almost like the universe has played a big game of like musical chairs or something with us and the music's just stopped.
Right.
And what you have is what you have, whether that's financially or romantically. And so many people, men and women that I'm speaking to are saying like, oh my gosh, if I'd have known this was going to happen, I would have been more proactive, or I would have actually sought to have some form of a relationship. So I have someone to like ride, bit of a selfish motivation, someone to ride out this period of time with. So I think it is a big wake up call. Something else I'm really noticing is that people have, as one of my female friends put it, skin hunger. Like people are starting to really miss that level of interaction and human contact. So I hear what you're saying about imagining people coming out of their hiding and it being a little bit tentative at the start and then getting back to normal. But I also think that we could be in for a period of time have you ever seen like mayflies? So these mayflies, look it up on YouTube, everybody. They live underground for years as little larvae by themselves. And then they get 24 hours where they go out and they're allowed out. And then obviously they all meet one another. And the men die, as is the common narrative. But I could see it kind of being like that we could also have some release of this pent-up energy that nobody's expressing right now.
Oh, they do have skin hunger, which sounds like a zombie thing. So let's talk about that then in terms of prepping yourself like for coming out on the other side. Now, there's definitely all the online dating stuff, and I'm actually going to ask you about that in our interview in reverse, because you're definitely more skilled and more experienced than I am at that. Seduction and dating doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? It happens as a part of your life. And so right now, okay, you can't run up to girls on the street or in the bar and go and talk to them. You can't go on dates, all right? So you do have your excuse for that. But what I would also be looking at is doing a stock take as well on your daily life, but looking at your social life, right? So I would literally go and write down every person that you know and break them into categories. And this may seem a bit like, well, why am I putting my mother in a category that seems a bit dystopian? I'm like, yeah, welcome to the dystopian future. No, there will be people that are your inner circle, your trusted bros, your family members, one category. There will be the people that you are hanging out with and doing and creating something with. And I always found this group to be a really dynamic group. It's maybe people you don't know that well. They might be reasonably new into your life, but there's a lot of energy surrounding that combination, because you're collaborating on something. You're doing a project, putting on a party together. You're just someone who's into this scene that you're really into, whether it's, medieval jousting or whatever. And so there can be a lot of energy that happens, because the old school people, even though you may love them and you've known them for 20, 30 years or whatever, it very likely you guys have a routine. Whereas this new dynamic, that's where I would say most of the energy exists. And there's another group, which is essentially your Facebook friends or your Instagram followers or your peripheral people that if you saw them at a party, you would go and chat to them for 10 minutes, but you're not going to invite them over. You're not going to go on a trip with them. You're not going to collaborate with them on a business, right? Those people are white noise, and we are white noise to other people, right? And that's something that's important to know, is that those people don't count, in the sense that, yeah, they count as your followers, and maybe they have some broad drifting network effect that you may find someone through that, but that you can't rely on those people and they can't rely on you. So what I would be looking at is do a stock take and split your people into those three broad categories: family and tight friends, the collaborators or your new friends, and then your Facebook friends, who I would just be like, man, they don't count, because there's nothing you can do for each other except like each other's posts, right? If that middle bracket, is that my fingers there? If that middle one is really light on, that's a problem. And I think a lot of people will realize that, oh, actually I have 1,000 people on my Facebook. Really? Do you know, how many do you know? 5 really well. And the rest are just like white noise. Because the reason I bring that up is because that middle group and your tight family and friends will be the ones that you can rely on and can build stuff with. And that dynamic second group is more likely to be the guys that you go out and meet women with, the people that you build a business with, the people that you travel with, the people that you go to a new city and get involved in a new scene with, right? And these are the things that create multipliers of effect. The idea of you doing all of this by yourself is not smart, even if you can do it. I've used the assistance of and the multiplying effect of all of the people around me, and they vice versa with me, all throughout my 20s, 30s, and now 40s, so that our network effect is vastly greater than we would have individually.
Right. And can you talk, because obviously I hear you and I completely agree that having a good social network is like standing on the shoulders of giants, because whilst I think it's really useful and actually very affirming and good for confidence to know how to meet people at random, wherever. And in fact, sometimes you can use those social skills of being able to approach somebody to add to that middle bracket and that network. Ultimately, what's always going to be more impactful and more effective is people that you have that some form of shared social relationship or connection with. So could you explain to the guys that are listening some of the reasons how that can have an amazing impact on the dating area of their life? And also, I think something else I wanted to ask you about, which I remembered from an old conversation we had, is I think that women will have a bigger middle category typically than men.
Cool. So yeah, I'd say on average that's probably true, in the sense that often men bunch together in small groups of 5 to 10, but usually more around 5. And they operate out of that group. And most men only do that once or twice or 3 times in their life. That group forms 1 or 2 or 3 times. And so, it might be the high school buddies, it might be uni buddies, or it might be the guys that you work with at the office buddies, or some variation. Okay, now that's where I came from. That was fine for me when I was 19 to 25 because that group of buddies was my band, right? We played music. We weren't famous. Don't get any ideas. But we were the most famous guys in the room where there was some girls, right? Like that's a really important thing. We were the most famous guys in a room where there were some girls. Now, if you're that part of your group is there's no girls in the room, whatever the room is, then it doesn't help you with your dating life. So therefore, it's actually a liability. Even if they're your best buddies and you can share your hopes and dreams, your social circle is a sexual liability. Really important to know, because you're spending time in it, right? So it's like, it doesn't matter if, yeah, sure, it can be really enriching in some other ways, although it might not be. It might be really bad for you in other ways as well, but it could be enriching. But what the reality is unless you just want to be a cold approach wolf, which is the guy that, American Psycho, lives at home in his 1-bedroom apartment, goes out, does his mad game, brings a girl back to the lair, does something to her, and then repeats that for the rest of his life, which I've met several guys, like 1, 2, or 3 guys I can think of who that worked for them, right? Like that, in terms of they were loners, they had good game, they made it work, right? Most of the guys, and myself included, got good as multiplying effects of men and women around them who were on the same path.
I think it's important that you bring that up, because I think guys often, in terms of the balance of where they focus their skills and their training in the area of dating, I think sometimes they overestimate some areas, like, I've got to be the best flirt, or I've got to be the most playful guy, or I've got to learn how to tease, or I've got to have the most amazing conversation, versus actually looking at dating in terms of a bigger picture effect, which actually, get this, her female friends, her immediate social circle, the context in which she lives, her previous experiences are going to have way more weighting and way more importance to her in terms of how she navigates any situation than that one thing that you say. And it's not to say don't work on improving those skills in yourself, but also by being able to acknowledge, well, actually her female social relationships are super important to her. That's probably actually going to be by working on developing those relationships, and dare I say, female friendships are actually a good thing for guys to develop. It's not a lame thing for guys to develop. That can actually help men out way more.
Of course, it's one of the questions I ask on my client questionnaire with every client. What are your female friends like? Do you have female friends, and what's the situation? And over half will say they have none, right? So, and many will be like, oh yeah, the friend of my best, the girlfriend of my best friend. It's like, she's not really a friend. You hang out with her when you hang out with your friend because she's there and maybe you like her and you're kind of buddies, but that's not like a friend, right? So, and it's weird when I have to convince people, I have to list people the benefits of having a female friend, like I'm selling them a TV. It's like, she can help you get laid. You will get to feel at ease with women in a non-pressurized environment, like all that kind of stuff.
So for the guys out there who are listening to this and they're like, okay, I get the idea. Right now I should be doing like a stock check of my life, how I'm spending my time, also stock check of my social life. If I find, and I think a lot of guys, when they do that stock take of their social life, are going to find that middle category where you have the potential to exponentially grow in your social life, which has all these awesome benefits in terms of bringing new women into your life. They makes dating easier. It develops a lot of trust with people very quickly. It helps to accelerate your growth. If the guys are coming up looking a little bit slim in that category, or perhaps that this period of time has been an inflection point where they've thought, man, I need to do something about this right now. Yep. What tools could you give them, or how would they suggest that they would follow up with your kind of methodology of starting to work on that?
Yes, that's a good question, because I don't want to just leave you with, do your stock take and then cry about it. What I would say is, what we can use this time for is rebuilding networks. And I mean, we're doing this. I'm making an effort, especially because I have time, to get in touch with people like you, with Zan, with other coaches and people in various fields who I haven't had time because I've been so busy to sit down with. And, me and Zan, we've been floating around each other for years and never had a conversation. Now we have, and now we're going to meet each other. So what I would do is check in with people. And what you have to be aware of is how do you approach people that you don't know so well, right? Like, they're not your closest friends that you can just go, hey man, whatever. Be aware that nothing is free. Nothing is unconditional, except probably the love of a mother to her child. I don't know, but that one looks like that's pretty tight. The rest of it is always conditional. And so don't expect that because you want something or you want attention or you want to hang out or you want to go to that cool thing that someone has, that they will do it for you just because, right? Like there's our generations have very weird levels of entitlement in different areas. And some of them is this entitlement of like, oh, if I want something, I don't even actually ask for it properly. I just expect that it's going to come. So I have a very simple framework that blows out into a very complex kind of mind map, which is the seductive economy. And I look at one of the ways of how do I create a bond with someone? Because if I go to a networking thing and go, I want to network with, Jimmy Joe over there because he's higher up in that. And I go over and hand him my card and go networked. It means nothing. The most important thing in networking is to be likable. That's the most important thing. People have to want to spend time around you. Anyway, but it's like whenever I make those contacts, I offer something, right? And even if it is, you know what the thing that I most often offer is listening to somebody, asking them a good, clean question about themselves and listening to the answer, right? Like rather than just launching into, hey, can you help me? Or going, oh, so how you doing? Fine, cool. All right, now I want this thing. So do you have any spare chicks that you could pass over? Like that's what I'm looking at is how do I give value in a way that makes someone feel good about themselves? And if you're someone who doesn't have money and riches and access to VIP somethings, you're like, I don't have anything to offer. Yes, you do. You have your attention, you have your intelligence, you have whatever it is that that person doesn't know but needs, right? And most importantly, you have curiosity and presence within that space with somebody. Right? If I'm present, I'm there with the person and I'm curious about them and I don't obviously have some needy agenda, like where I'm just, oh, I'm really interested, but I really need that thing. If it's like, cool, I'm curious, I want to know about you and I'm willing to listen and feed you back what I hear you say, that is so valuable. That's why people pay therapists and coaches and all sorts of other things to have people listen to them. So I am actually launching an entire academy on this subject in the next 3 weeks. I know the best way to get what you want is to make sure the people around you are getting what they want.
Right. And I like the concept that you were talking about as well, about the power and value of listening, because I think a lot of the time, not just talking about social stuff, but in dating, again, we overemphasize how do I become like this most alpha person, or how do I lead, or how do I talk at, or how do I amuse, or how do I entertain, when in fact, equally important as leadership is an ability to listen and respond and make somebody else feel heard and for them to invest in the interaction. And you can't do one thing without the other. So I know you mentioned your Lifestyle Academy. For the guys that are watching this, do you want to tell them about how they could get involved or learn more about that? Because I know from anyone I know, you are one of the people that has probably the most holistic approach to how to get better in this area of your life. If people want to participate in that lifestyle where they know the 1% or the 0.1% of people, or they get to travel the world, or they've got this massive social circle of cool men and women in their lives, how could they go about learning that through you?
Okay, so in answer to that, so what I've been doing over a number of years is working on essentially a online academy where I'm drawing in men from around the world to work on their lifestyles holistically. Now, I've been doing that live in workshops and in private coaching for 12 years. And this has been, I'm using this time and pivoting my business and my lifestyle has pivoted like everyone's very quickly. But the thing is that, and I don't want to be smug about this, and there's a lot of just like, as you said, musical chairs where you are when the music stops. If you're a 21-year-old guy and the music stopped and you're like, and I'm here going, well, you should have, built a mansion and had a cool social circle. Well, you should have thought about that. That's not very fair because he hasn't had the time that I've had. But because I am a bit older and I have had plenty of time of only working on my lifestyle design since about 18 to now 40, that's all I worked on. Now, because my core value has always been freedom, and I have morphed and changed and adapted. I've moved from city to country to social scene, right? So, and yet I'm still me, right? I'm still just like a rock and roll dude who's just been being more or less at ease with myself, more or less myself, and enjoying that more or less all of the time. And that's what I think the secret, if we want to look at success in lifestyle, it's not a certain number of money. It's not a certain number of sexes. Yeah. It is, were you able to be at ease with yourself and be yourself more or less most of the time whilst having a good time? And did you get to do the things you wanted to do in that time? Ask yourself those questions. If the answers are hard no's or on a lot of those, it needs to change. So what I'm doing is James Marshall's Midlife Crisis Survival Academy or something like that. What this will be is an opportunity over these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, which is, I would say, probably with 8 weeks, depending where you are, we're all going to be let out in some form or another. And looking at that, what are you doing on day one? And what are you doing in the weeks leading up to and coming out? Because the reason I thought of it as a midlife crisis, think of it like that. Now you've had a wake-up call, which is like, dude, life is happening and you missed that bit in some metrics. It's going to open again. What are you going to do? And many people, tragically, will just come out and go, oh, yay, cool, I'm doing stuff, and then just straight back into their exact same rat maze, and they will make 0 changes. And then there will be some who go, no way, I'm going to make this the catalyst for my next life, which is the one after when I get out, to be fucking excellent. So what you can do is you can join me on that journey. I will be on calls every week. I will be having a huge amount of interactivity with my guys. I will be giving online live lectures on things that such as the seductive economy, looking at how do you take your 3 areas of people and maximize them so that you can create networks, so that you can have wing girls who help you get laid, so that you can get access to social scenes you wouldn't get access to, so that you can start thinking not just locally in terms of your town, but think nationally, internationally, and if you choose to, once we're able to travel again, live the internationalist, roving, hedonistic / personally explosive life that was possible just recently and probably will be again. Don't miss it the second time.
That's compelling. I love it. So I guess I will put links to how people can get access to that beneath this video.
I don't know what they are yet or where they are, but when there's a link, Hayley will put it somewhere that you can see it.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to say thanks again. I'm actually super stoked for coming back to Budapest at some time. And also to emphasize the purpose of lifestyle design is super, super important. So definitely I'll also link to, I'm sure you know about James and the Natural Lifestyles already, but if not, check out the link beneath this video to their channel. They're awesome. I really rate them for their teaching style, really quality, intelligent, well-designed advice. Head there. And also, if you like the idea of having the seductive economy and a big lifestyle change and not missing round 2 of life, I'm going to put a link below this video to that. So thank you so much for chatting today, James, and hopefully I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you, Hayley. It's always a pleasure. Best of luck with the baby making, and I can't wait to see it.